Peace and blessings. This is your brother Gabar. Let me make sure you guys can hear me. I think you can. This is IAMFITPodcast. Are you fit to go God's way? Let's go. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. I came a little late because I was working late, so I had to rush home. I didn't even have a chance to change, so I had a little study I was doing last night, and I was trying to put the PowerPoint together. I had to finish it today, and I thought I was coming home a little earlier. That, just life got in the way. But, we're here. Thank you for allowing me to go into your living room for a few minutes, a few hours maybe, We're going to go into a little study in the book of John because, reading this book called the Bible, which is really a library that has been put together as a book, but it's really a collection of books. You learn something every day. You may discover something years ago that at that time didn't have any much meaning or no meaning at all. Years later, it has an enormous meaning, understanding. And you take things for granted because, sometimes the Bible is one of those books that I read the entire thing, not all at once. I kind of say, okay, I'm going to read the 5 books of Moses, then I want to read the book of Kings, then I'll read the gospel, then I read, I just jump all over the place. So sometimes you take for granted that that certain things are repeated over and over again, or all gospel pretty much say the same thing, or they say the same thing a little different. But I want to study and have a conversation about the book of John. And why is that? Because the book of John is unique. And everybody knows that I used to be with GOCC around the year 2013. The church switched over to the Enoch calendar, which I love, by the way. I like the calendar. And I know I know that I'm familiar with the issues of the calendar. It's a little too short. You have to kind of adjust every 6th or 7th year. But outside of that, I'm in love with the book. I'm in love with the calendar. And I believe that the calendar, is the best calendar to resolve the issue on Christ mimicking every year the same time of the week when Christ suffered and went through his passion, right? So the inner calendar kind of puts that, it doesn't make it all, the Passover all over the place every year. Because the lunar calendar, the only thing I don't like about it is that it's not fixed in regards of the day of the week every year. But the inner calendar is, with some minor adjustments, like the lunar calendar. The lunar calendar has also adjustments, right? They got, you got, I think every 4th year, you got to add a 13th month because the moon comes too, it comes 10 days too short. So 10 days, 20 days, 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, right? 30 days is basically a month. So every 3rd month or 4th year, on the 4th year, the end of the 3rd, the beginning of the 4th, you have to add a Nissan 2 or a Adar 2 or something, a 13th month. And I do believe the moon is involved in the cycle. I think that cycle or understanding has been lost. But given with the diaspora, the inner calendar is really better than the lunar calendar, way better. It's a very easy method to follow. That's why I like it. So shalom, peace and blessings to all the brothers that are joining. Let me make sure that I could be heard. Yep. Okay, good. So let's start, right? Let's start the reason why the book of John is unique for 2 reasons, for 2 important reasons. It gives us a lot of essential information that is not mentioned in the Synoptic Gospels. The Synoptic Gospels are associated with Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Synoptic means they kind of they're in sync, so to speak. John takes a different path. You don't hear the same parable or no parable, mostly with Christ in the book of John. He goes a different path. And even certain things that you remember, you forget, or you knew, but you forget. And I'm like, I took this for granted, or maybe I assumed that all the Gospels say the same thing. But John is unique. So I want to go into the gospel real quick. And let me go here. Matter of fact, let me go here. And let me go here. Where are you? I think over here. Let me go here. And let me go here, and let me share the screen. So let me share the screen for you brothers. Let me turn this to my other camera. I am a one-man show. Okay. And I put a little PowerPoint together. And here it is. Okay, let me just put the slideshow for you guys. Beautiful. There you go. Okay, so a biblical study on the book of St. John. So we're going to go into a quick understanding or the difference and the importance of the book of John, because if it wasn't for the book of John, we would not have a leg to stand on in regards of the book of Enoch or the Enoch calendar. If we didn't have the book of John, we would not know that the Passover was being kept that Saturday evening or that Saturday day. Or we would have known that Christ kept his Passover, his Last Supper with his disciples, a day before his passion, right? That's why I say I'm great. That's why Christ says, I'm grateful that I'm having this Passover or this feast with you guys before my passion. right? So, as you said, I'm using some of the Russian icons, and I want to start using these icons because they show a better depiction of the disciples than these Renaissance paintings, right? And I know there's been Putin, supposedly. I still want to know if the translation that we hear is legit. I want to speak to a Russian speaker. Anybody knows how to speak Russian, or anybody knows somebody knows how to speak Russian? Please bring them on the show. I want to have that discussion. I'm trying to get a AI translator, but I'm trying to find the organic video without the translation. Just the raw video, and I'm having some issues finding that. So if anybody has found the original video of Putin without the translation, please send to me some of your email at IAMFITPodcast@gmail.com. And then I'm going to translate that video into English using AI, because now you got different apps now that you could do that to confirm. But I always like to have a human being, right, as a second witness to confirm whether it's a hoax or whether it's true. But the good thing about this thing going viral about Putin bringing out the black icons of Russia, which I was familiar with those books and those things since the 90s, but now is becoming part of the ether discussions, right? So I want to have a discussion about the book of John. And, within the writings, this is that's a manuscript of the book of John. That's a Russian icon of the Apostle John. And this is a scene of Christ washing his feet, and which I kind of forgot, or maybe I took for granted. And I've been doing this for 30 years. I did not realize that the story of John washing his disciples' feet was only recorded in the book of John. So let's see what else was only recorded in the book of John. So let's read this commentary real quick. It says, in the book of St. John is the only biblical record that we have in the Bible that records the Roman soldier not breaking Christ's legs, fulfilling the prophecy mentioned in the book of Psalms. So shout out to the book of John. If it wasn't for the book of John, we would not have this. Look it up. It doesn't exist in the book of Mark, Matthews, or Luke. It does not exist in those three books. Everything else exists, the crucifixion, the parables, everything else. But if it wasn't for the book of John, we would not have this particular prophecy. What else? As I mentioned this before, St. John is the only record that reports Jesus washing his disciples' feet in the Last Supper. Shout out to the book of John. And I think John, he was a scribe. He was a recorder. He was the main recorder. I think he also recorded the book of Acts. And I'm trying to see what else of course, Revelation and St. John 1 and 3. So a lot of people think that, okay, Paul has more books than John, but John, when you count the words that John said, the things that John wrote is much larger. So when you combine the book of John, or the little St. John's, St. John 1, 2, and 3, Revelations, it's actually more than Peter. Than Paul. Peter too, but Paul as well, right? A lot of people think it's Paul. He has the most books, but when you calculate the length of the book of John, the length of the book of Revelation, and the other smaller Johns, is actually more writing than Paul. So I believe that Christ preserved John for that reason, to point out things that was necessary to be recorded to fulfill his prophecy. What else is unique in the book of John, right? So, okay, so I wanna bring something else out. Let me start sharing real quick, right? And I want to bring this out, right? All the other records in the Bible, it records let's see here. Let me go here. Let me go the preparation. What would that be? 27. Okay. And let me go here. It's 27 or 20? Yeah, 27. Hold on 2 seconds, folks. Let me just get this real quick. I just want to make sure. Commander, the next day. Okay, here we go. Here we go. This is what I'm looking for. So, okay, so we all know that the term, okay, put this a little bigger. All right, this is good. Okay, this is good. This is good. This is good. So let me share this with you guys real quick. And, nope, that's not it. Okay, here we go. Let me share, there we go. This with you guys. Okay, so we all understand that the term, the preparation, is Friday. And when you go into the tradition of of the elders, around 3 o'clock Friday, or around the time when the sun starts declining, because the sun comes up at 6 o'clock in the morning, approximately. In the summer, a little earlier. In the winter, a little later, right? I think, because the days are shorter in the winter, right? So let's say hypothetically, it comes up at 6 o'clock in the morning. It reaches its peak at 12 noon. It stays on its peak all the way towards around the 9th hour, right? Because it's 12 hours in a day, right? So from 6 to 9, the sun is rising, right? And then it reaches its peak until 12. Or excuse me, from 6 to 12, it's rising, and it reaches its peak at 12. It stays on its peak until 3, and it starts declining at 3 o'clock, and then the sun will go down around 6, approximately. So around 3 o'clock, that time, everything you have for the Sabbath should be in your home. And around, I believe, 3 o'clock, that's when you should start the meal. So 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock, although it's still, the sun is still up and it's not yet night, those last 3 hours, traditionally, we dedicate to cook the meal that we're going to eat with our Sabbath evening dinner. So from 3 to 6 is dinner time. At 6 o'clock, that's when we eat dinner. And it's funny because I remember in DR, a lot of people from the Caribbean will probably attest to this, that we eat the meal very early. Like, I remember my grandfather was, eating breakfast like 6 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, we eating lunch. By 6 o'clock in the evening, we eating dinner, right? So in I won't say third world country, but developing countries or Caribbean countries, we still keep this tradition. We come up with the sun, right? And we're up very early, right? So I want to bring this particular scenario because when you look at the term preparation, we all know is the day before the Sabbath, right? Now, the term is mentioned in the gospel 6 times in the 4 gospels. Once in Matthew's, once in Mark, once in Luke, and 3 times in John and Ephesians is one time, right? Ephesians 6 and 15. But I mean, this may be another word in the Greek, but I'll check later. However, though, if it wasn't for the book of John, we would not know that there were two Passovers being kept. And let's remove the book of John. Let's say it never exists. We only have the three gospels, the synoptic gospel, right? And Matthew's, right? Now, the next day that follow, the day of the preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees came unto Pilate, right? This is when they wanted to make sure that you put a guard because they did not want, according to them, for the apostles to steal the body, right? Mark 15, right? 42. And now when the evening was come, now the evening is when that twilight hours from 3 to 6, when the sun is declining. At evening was come because it was the preparation that is the day before the Sabbath. That would be considered a Friday, right? So if we will read the book of Matthew's and the book of Mark and the book of Luke without the book of John, we're going to go later in the book of John, but we're going to just deal with these books. Mark, Luke, Matthew's, Mark, and Luke. Luke, and that day was the preparation in the Sabbath drew on. So we will say, okay, Christ got crucified on Friday on the day of preparation. Now, the lunar Sabbath keepers will say that a Passover that lands any day of the week because of the lunar cycle doesn't correlate with the week. It's also called Sabbath, and they will be right. But because when you go to the other chapters, like for instance, when you go to chapter 26, right? What do we get here, right? And it came to pass when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said unto his disciples, ye know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified, right? And then when you scroll down, they would ask Christ when we will keep the Passover, right? Verse 20. Now, when the evening came, he sat down with his 12. And as they eat, he said, verily I say unto you that one of you shall betray me. We all know this is the Last Supper, but I just want to go back to, here we go. Verse 19. And his disciples did as Jesus had appointed them, and they made ready the Passover. So if we would not have known that Christ kept his own Passover before the annual Passover that the Jews was keeping every year on Saturday, giving premise or weight on the Enoch calendar. Because if we would not have had the book of John, we would not know there will be two Passover that year. Christ kept one before he was suffering, or he will go into his passion, right? And the one that the Jews kept throughout the year, landing on a Saturday, giving credence to the Passover. I hope I'm making sense here. If the book of John never existed, we would never have the understanding that they kept two Passover. We would have assumed that that year the Passover landed on a Thursday. And it would have gave argument or credence to the lunar calendar. I hope I'm making sense. Right? So I want to just set the status because all three gospels repeat the same thing. Matthew's, Mark, and Luke repeats the same thing. Right? The only ones that that is different that actually mentions the Passover and not only says it was a Sabbath, but it was a Passover, is the book of John. John 19 and 14. It says, and it was the preparation of the Passover. You see, they didn't say the Sabbath. So now we know that we're getting ready for the Passover, which is a Sabbath. And about the 6th hour, and he said unto the Jews, behold your king. John 19:31. The Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was a high day, besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. Now, like I said, the leg story of Christ, almost his leg been broken, but when they realized he was already dead, they didn't break his legs, fulfilling the prophecy of the book of Psalms. It's only recorded in the book of John. John 19:42. There lay Jesus before, because of the Jews' preparation day, for the sepulchre was near at hand. So only John 14 and 31 confirms. Actually, the only really one that says the Passover is John 19:40, right? So John 19:40. So let me go back to the. Did we get it? Let me go back to the PowerPoint. There you go. Okay, I love this technology. Shout out. Mary Grace, Shalom, welcome. I haven't seen new names, so I'm excited. Thank you. Make sure you like and subscribe, because when I look at my algorithms and behind the scene, regards of my subscribers versus viewers, only 48% of my viewers are subscribed. 52% are not subscribed. So please do me a favor, just subscribe. I appreciate it. It helps the algorithm. Shalom, and bless you, brothers and sisters. Okay, so here we go. So St. John is the only record that records Jesus washing his disciples' feet. That's very important. That's extremely important, because all of that, I believe, is connected to Christ telling his disciples, when his disciples asked him, who should be the greatest among you? He said, listen, the Gentiles exercise lordship, but not you guys. Let him that is the greatest serve, and let him that serve be as the greatest. And he said, you call me master and Lord, and that I am, and I wash your feet. If I'm your Lord and I wash your feet, wash each other's feet. That's only recorded in the book of John. Let's give a shout out to the book of John. Come on, right? St. John, man, he was a deep, he recorded a lot. We got to give him thanks for the book of Acts that he recorded. He recorded a lot of information. And that was his profession. He was a scribe. Right? So now we have a problem, though. Let everything be established between what? 2 or more witnesses, right? So if we have 3 agnostic gospel that says that Christ kept the Passover, which would have been Thursday night, and all the other, and the three gospels, right, outside of John, just simply says that it was the preparation of the Sabbath, denoting it was Friday, we would have said, okay, the Jews kept the Passover Friday that year, right? So we got 3 witnesses against 1. That's a problem, because why? In the Bible, it says, let everything be established between 2 or 3 witnesses. We got 3 witnesses. So we need to get more witnesses to verify whether John was also describing the truth, right? You can harmonize both, but now John needs witnesses, right? So I went outside the Bible to see, is there witnesses collaborating with John's gospel, right? So we went to the Sanhedrin 43a, right? Let me go here real quick. And this is a writings that is not favorable to Christ. Okay, so those Christians, I apologize if this writing offends you. This is from the perspective of the Sanhedrin, or the perspective of the records that the Jewish people kept. Now, one thing I got to say, I don't believe that the European Jews are the real Jews. I believe they're Romans converting into Judaism. However, though, one thing I have to appreciate about the Jewish population, so-called Jewish population, Roman converts, the Romans were particular, and they were experts and great at it, of recording and gathering all the records. Alexandria was famous for that. The Alexandria Library in Egypt is well renowned, even to this day, even after many of the records got burned. And I want to go to the Alexandria Library before I die. I just want to spend a good year and just try to discover records in the books, and hopefully there could be translation. I want to try to get as much translation app I could maybe translate as much as possible, and just study and just consume information. So this record is a record that is of the Babylonian source, the Babylonian Talmud, the Sanhedrin 43a, and reads as follows. And Mishnah teaches that a kira goes out before the condemned men. This is referring to Christ. This indicates that it is the only before him. Let me go straight to the point. Let me start at the Gemara raised a difficulty that isn't it taught in the Barantiaka. I don't know what that is. On the Passover Eve, they hang the corpse of Jesus of Nazareth after they killed him by ways of stoning. And a creditor went out before him for 40 days, and it goes into different things. So in their records, he got crucified on the eve of the Passover, right? And let's see here what else it goes into. And the story is a little different. They say they also stoned him. But I remember when, even through the time of the cross, when he was carrying the cross, they were mocking him and stoning him as well. And there's records about that too. Okay, so this is the Sanhedrin in the Babylonian Talmud say that he got crucified, right? And they hang him on the eve of the Passover. That's witness number 2, confirming or helping the narrative of John, right? And this has come from enemies of Christ, right? There will be, there will be no reason for them to lie about this, because this kind of helps the narrative that Christ was the sacrificial lamb because he got killed right before the Passover, right? So if they would have turned, they would want to distance Christ from the Passover, because that kind of fulfills the prophecy, right? So in the Sanhedrin 43a, it is recorded that Christ was crucified or hanged on the eve of the Passover, which is correlating with John, right? Okay, so this is also a Joyce Seneclus wrote in the chronically. I can't pronounce that word. Excuse me. Let me just read I got the source in the bottom. Like I said, any source that you guys want me to send you, send me an email. I'll send you the sources. You could also have in the bottom, but you could just, in the bottom there. I know it's hard to kind of, but just look up this, just look up the title on top, and it will come up. It says, for the Hebrews calendar, for the Hebrews celebrate the Passover, the lunar 14. The lunar was also synonymous with the word month. And what happened to the Savior occur one day before the Passover. One day before the Passover, right? So it also records that another record stating that Christ was crucified one day before the Passover. Now, that's a second witness, right? Helping John. You got the Gospel of Peter. We went over this as well, right? verse, let me start at verse 2. And there was standing there Joseph, the friend of Pilate and of the Lord, knowing that they were about to crucify him. He came to Pilate and asked the body of the Lord for burial. And Pilate sent to Aaron and asked his body. And Herod said, Brother Pilate, even if no one has asked for him, we propose to bury him, especially as the Sabbath drawn on. For it is written in the law that the sun shall not, the sun set not upon one that is been put to death. Right? It's because Herod was a Jewish convert. That's the reason why you got all these Europeans, historical scenario of European converting. You got the Idumean King Herod was not a blood Jew, but he was part of the Sanhedrin body. He was in charge of the Sanhedrin, but he was a convert. Agrippa, right? Another convert mentioned in the Bible. Of course, you got the, Onkelos. Jonathan, the Onkelos Targum, was written by a convert. Jonathan was written by a convert. You got the Khazarian conversion, right? You got all these conversions specifically happening in Europe, but we got to accept all these people as being the authentic Jews? Come on, we have to be reasonable here, right? But one thing that they did, and this is what the Greeks are good for, is keeping those records, right? So in the book of the Gospel of Peter, verse 3, it says, and he delivered him to the people on the day before the unleavened bread, their feast. So if it's before, that means Christ kept a Passover a day before his passion, before he got crucified. This is the Didaskarosin. I can't even pronounce that word, so forgive me. Oh, wait. I think I went. Okay. This is also another record. This is going back to the Didaskis. I can't pronounce that word, so forgive me. Is a harmony of the four gospel created. Is a harmony, harmonized of the four gospel created in the 2nd century, and it's attributed to Tertullian. Can pronounce that word. It's around 170 to 175. This is a little late for me. I once it's a little late for me, but I could accept it. And this also goes into stating that that Christ was also crucified on Friday. And it says when it says Arabic, that means there were different. They kind of put it all together. Let me see if I have. Okay, so this is. I should have put this one first. So there were different records. Some were Greek, some were Ethiopic, and some were Arabic. So they kind of put them all together. So they found different fragments of the same writings, and they kind of put it together. I hope that makes sense, right? Okay, so you guys could go into that. And it also says that, and that day was Friday of the Passover, right? So it says, and when Pilate heard this saying, he took Jesus out and set on the tribune in the place where it was called the pavement of stone, but in the Hebrew called Golgotha. On that day was the Friday of the Passover. I mean, it was the day before the Passover. Okay, and this is you guys can read on this. This is now it is the Catholics kind of is considered is a universal thing. So this is like is a writing that they were putting together, but they took a little bit from the Gospel of Peter, the Acts, and Paul, right? Let me see, what's this? It's the same thing. What else is this? Yeah, here we go. In the bottom, Okay, now, okay, this is the Adelicacia, right? I'm bad at pronouncing these names, so forgive me. This is supposed to have been a writing of the apostles, right? I think it's also, let me see. Yeah, this one's a little late, 200 to 250. It's real late. So and forgive me if you guys can see. Let me see if I can remove the logo. If I could remove what is the logo? Boop. There you go. Look like magic. Oh my God, technology is great. So they also and they kind of like harmonize all the gospel and also this, they make claim that this was written by the apostles. And I believe that every claim, there's some truth to it. The only problem is there's an embellishment. There's some issues with adding and subtracting and taking out and back and forth. So you can't trust them too much, right? But even here, now in this version, it gives the impression that Christ was having the dinner on Wednesday with his disciples. That's why I remember a few weeks back I was having a conversation and I was saying that Christ could have had his Passover on either Thursday or Wednesday, right? I believe it's Thursday because that's what all the evidence, but there is some ancient records like this one that goes into that it was Wednesday. There's the reason why. Let me start from verse 13 on top. It says, wherefore when the feast indicate for them that are lost, we also did when our Savior suffered. For while he was yet with us, before he suffered, as we were eating the Passover with him, he said to us, today in this night, one of you shall betray me. And we said unto him, each one of us, it is I, Lord. So this is supposed to be the apostles retelling the story. Is there some truth to it? I don't know, but we have to look into this, right? And let me see, that night, and one of was betraying me. Okay, let me go down to, matter of fact, let me start at the bottom paragraph, right? Because that's the one I want to, that's the one I was referring to. It says, now this was done on the 4th day of the week. See, they say not the 4th, this would not, the Thursday will be the 5th, and the 6th will be Friday, right? So it says, this was done on the 4th day of the week, for when we had eaten the Passover on the 3rd day of the week at evening, and you know when the evening is really the starting of the new day, we went forth to the Mount of Olives, and in the night they seized our Lord Jesus. And the next day, which was the 4th of the week, he remained inward in the house of Caiaphas, the high priest. And on the same day, the chief of the people were assembled and took counsel against him. And on the next day, again, which was the 5th day of the week, they brought him to Pilate, the governor. And he remained again inward with Pilate the night after the 5th day of the week. But when it was drawn on the Friday, they accused him much before Pilate, and they could show nothing that was true, but gave false witness against him. And they asked him of Pilate to be put to death and they crucified him on the same Friday. Now, obviously, the Jews, the apostles, will not use the word Friday. That's why this document is questionable. That's why it could probably be embellished. But one thing it does prove that Friday was the day he was crucified, and also he was crucified before the Passover. Let me see if we have something else. It continues, it says, and he suffered then at the 6th hour on Friday, these hours within our. Now, they, in this particular writing, they also explain how the the 3 days and 3 nights was shortened. I don't believe it, but this is this explanation. And this is the explanation that most Christians will give today. It says, and he suffered then at the 6th hour on Friday, and these hours wherein our Lord was crucified were reckoned a day. And afterwards, again, there was darkness for 3 hours, and it was reckoned a night. And again, from the 9th hour until evening, 3 hours reckoned a day. And afterwards, again, there was the night of the Sabbath of the Passion. But in the Gospel of Matthew, it is thus written, at evening on the Sabbath, when the first day of the week drew on, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the tomb. And there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down and rolled away the stone. And again, there was the day of the Sabbath, and then 3 hours of the night after the Sabbath. Therein our Lord slept. And that was fulfilled with, he said, the Son of Man must pass 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, as it is written in the gospel. Again, it is written in David, behold, thou hast set my days in measured. Psalms 38:6. Now, because these days and nights were short, it was so written. So this is the explanation. Now, this book is claiming that the apostle is bringing this explanation. I'm not 100% sure that this is correct, but this is the explanation. And this is where a lot of Christians would derive their understanding that you could get 3 days and 3 nights out of from Friday to Sunday. I don't believe it. I believe he was mostly he was risen on Monday. That would make a better sense. Okay, on Monday, but there's no record that we have to validate that, and there's no records outside. There's no records that exist that Christ was. There's no other record. All the records points that Christ was crucified on Friday. All the records that is out there, it points that Christ was risen on Sunday. But the Sunday and the Friday doesn't give us 3 days and 3 nights. That's a bigger problem. And I was thinking about this. I wonder if Christ was giving a sign that he hasn't fulfilled yet. I wonder that prophecy was a prophecy that he was like throwing a curveball to the apostles. I mean, not as part of the Jews, because the Jews knew that prophecy. Remember, they went to Pilate and said, this guy said he's going to be risen in 3 days. So maybe he was referring to a future prophecy that he's going to fulfill, right? And he wasn't talking about his burial. I'm just guessing here. This is a theory. I'm just speculating, right? Let's see what else is here. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, so and I got the link below if you guys want to ask any questions, any pushback, anything you want me to elaborate on. But I believe that the book of John should be respected because it preserved records that is essential to our faith. The only place that we have that the Jews that year was keeping the Passover on Saturday. That's the only record biblically. Well, outside the Bible, we have more, and I show that, but there is the only place. The only place that goes into Christ washed his disciples' feet, and he commanded them that you must do this. As I did it, you must do it. And that's why I believe there are several things we must do on the Passover. I know a lot of brothers and a lot of churches out there get caught up with, celebrating and doing praise dancing and singing and performances, which is all great. But I think drinking the wine, eating the matzah, And I believe passing, because when Christ gave it to his said disciples, he says, pass this one to another. So I believe it's supposed to be one person in the table. He takes the bread, which should be the leader or the elder of that table, pass it, and they pass it to each other, eat it, drink it. And I believe that there are, in the Didache, which is a record that I also respect, there's a prayer that we got to keep in the Passover that was recorded as well. Also, I believe we got to also wash each other's feet. I think that's part of the ritual, right, that Christ commanded his disciples to do, right, and to keep us humble every year, right? And I think, let's just say you had a falling out with a brother. I think those are the brothers you got to wash their feet, right? I think any issues you had, your wife, your daughter, your son, wash each other's feet is a sign of humility. You know, so I think that's something that every year going forward, I'm going to implement, right? And I know sometimes you got big churches, you know, thousands of people. That may be difficult. Maybe people could do it at their home or what have you, or in the hotel. But I think that's something that should be done. That's my personal opinion, and so forth, so on. I got the link in the comment section if people want to call in or call into through the SteamYard. If you may have a disagreement, if you may have a question or something for me to clarify, please call in through SteamYard. But this is, you know, important for us to appreciate these records because we don't have all the records. I truly believe that all the churches of the world should have some class action lawsuit against the Roman Catholic Church and demand for them to release all those books they have in those secret library that they're hiding up. I believe there's a lot of more books that could clear up the issue, right? In regards of these blind spots that we have in regards of understanding, right? There's always been a big controversy about why did Christ didn't mention about multiple wives or not, right? A lot of people think he did, and so forth, so on. The only records that we have that he even remotely mentioned is the book of I think Mark, or not the book of the Gospel of Thomas. I think we went over that a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, right? And it's because Mark asked him, I was like, well, what's the sin against your flesh? And he said, if you're suffering fornication, have one wife, but if you have another wife, you don't sin. But if you have a third, after a third, Bartholomew, there you go. You know, Brother Logic, he always brings in these. Correct me. He's like my sidekick without being my sidekick, you know, unofficial sidekick. So shalom, Brother Logic. So, we only got scraps, you know, and so forth, so on. I believe there's a lot there also in the Alexandria Library, right? And there's the reason why I want to create, you know, the Man Going God's Way, because I also want to have brothers traveling and have, like, you know, it's like, you know, I remember when I used to watch, you know, Kung Fu flicks when I was a kid at 3 o'clock. Every Saturday at 3 o'clock, they used to come out with the Kung Fu flicks. The Shaolin and the 5 Deadly Vellums and all these different martial arts movies, right? And there was the Shaolin Temple. Basically, the philosophy of the Shaolin Temple is that you will go there, train, become a master, and then you will spread out and start your own school. That's kind of like the idea that, you know, one brother will say, you know what, I'm going to go to Egypt and try to study as much books as possible. I'm going to try to go to the Vatican and see if I could perhaps, you know, obtain some of these books and things like that. Because I believe they allow you to witness certain books, not all, and so forth, so on. The Coptic Church of Ethiopia, the Alexandria Church of Alexandria, Egypt, the Syriac Church, the Eastern Orthodox, the icons of Russia, right? Well, what other books do they have, you know, and records that we could translate and have and get out, increase our scholarship, right? This is very important. So appreciate the book of John. It's one of the books that goes into Christ says, I am the shepherd, I am the light, I am the good shepherd. No one comes to the Father but through me. All that is the only book that goes into the Comforter. I will send you the Comforter. He expound upon the Holy Spirit, right? You got other places, say, tarry here in Jerusalem until I send you the Holy Spirit. But really in the book of John, chapter 14, 15, and 16, that all that speech is in the book of John, right? And it's also, all that speech is in the Last Supper after Judas Iscariot left. Chapter 17, it records the prayer. Remember when Christ went to pray and he left his disciples, Peter, John, and James, and remember he called them sleeping 3 times? In the book of John, chapter 17, it records the prayer he had with his Father. So take a relook of the book of John and the importance of it, and so forth, so on. Now, I want to bring out this scholar by the name of Mark Goodrich, right? You may see this guy in other, let's see here, let me go here. Okay, this is John in the Gnostic Gospel, right? So he's going to talk about that. This guy is one of the premier scholars in that you may see in the History Channel and things of that nature. Fair use.
He paraphrases, he creatively embellishes, he elaborates.
Okay,
this
I'm
sort
hearing
of thing. That's more the norm in ancient use of source.
I'm hearing we cannot hear the video. Let me fix that real quick. My apologies. Video. Okay, so can you guys hear it now?
That's what John generally does. So when he's telling the story of the feeding of the 5,000, for example, he doesn't tell it in exactly the same words
that you
find in Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Can't hear neither.
He uses different turns of phrase, he expands it greatly, adds different characters, adds more discourse, and so on. And that's a fairly normal way for an ancient writer to use their sources. I think John has...
All right, so let me, we can hear now. Okay, outstanding. Okay, thank you. So let me rewind it one more time, and let's play it. Fair use.
I'm pretty convinced that John was familiar with all 3 synoptic gospels. And
can you guys hear it? I want to pause it for a little bit, just make sure everybody could hear it. Just give me a thumbs up, or yes or no. Can you guys hear that? You guys will be able to hear that. Just give me a thumbs up if you guys could hear it. If you cannot hear it, just tell me no. Okay, I don't hear the response. So I'm gonna keep playing it. If you don't hear it, just let me know.
I'm pretty convinced that John was familiar with all 3 synoptic gospels, and that in lots of places the author presupposes elements that are narrated in the synoptic gospels. But one of the reasons why people don't tend to see John as being familiar with the synoptics is that they're expecting to see the same kind of agreement that you see between Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And John is not like that. In fact, John is much more like other ancient writers that use sources in that he paraphrases, he creatively embellishes, he elaborates, this sort of thing. That's more the norm in ancient use of sources, and that's what John generally does. So when he's telling the story of the feeding of the 5,000, for example, he doesn't tell it in exactly the same words that you find in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. He uses different turns of phrase, he expands it greatly, adds different characters, adds more discourse, and so on. And that's a fairly normal way for an ancient writer to use their sources. I think John has intimate familiarity with all three synoptic texts. The more you read John against the background of the synoptics, the more you see themes that are key in the synoptics being elaborated in John. So it's not a passing acquaintance, it's quite a deep knowledge. I don't think he had the text in front of him while he was writing. A lot of it is memory of text, and he's using his own memory of the text as a means also of elaborating on the text, reflecting on the text. For much of Christian history, people have seen John as a kind of meditation on the synoptics, and we tended to belittle this in scholarship for a long time, but actually it was on the right lines. I think John is kind of a creative embellishment, an imaginative retelling of lots of the traditions that you find in the synoptics. I think one of the problems that we have with John's Gospel in contemporary scholarship is that people really, really want to have another source for historical Jesus work. And if John is independent of the synoptics, then we've got an independent witness to the historical Jesus. And if we've got an independent witness, when it's Jesus doing these amazing miracles and with a very high Christology, then that's very exciting to those that want to have a historical Jesus who's a bit more like the Johannine Jesus.
So there you go. So there you have it. So
Hi everyone,
so the Gospel of John, it is different. Like I said, read it today, tonight, or tomorrow in comparison to the difference between the Gospels, right? I would say read Mark first because it's the shortest of the four, and shortest of the three synoptic gospel, right? So to kind of give you a summary, or read Matthew's because I think Matthew's is the more detail and things of that nature. But we all four and see where's the difference. But you're gonna see that John it covers a much more plethora, right, of information than than Luke, Mark, and Matthew's. And why is this important? What would we not have if we didn't have John recording what he recorded? What we would have not have if God would have preserved his life? A lot of people don't understand what John went through. John got thrown in some hot pit, but he survived it. They did attempt to kill him, right? It wasn't that he did not, that he didn't go through what the other apostles went through. He was just, he just survived it to the point that he was almost disfigured to some degree. In the island of Patmos, when he was sentenced to, that was a jail. That was a place that excommunicate you. If you're an island, if you don't have a boat, where are you gonna go, right? And that's just the way. And I remember, I think what they used to visit him and give him food or what have you, but he was there with prisoners. He wasn't there alone. He was in a prison, and he saw this vision, right? The Most High was working with him. So thank the Most High that, John fought through his hardship and he was able to survive to give us all this information, the book of Revelation, the book of St. John. And I believe that John, he said, you know what? Like this particular scholar said, Mark Goodrich stated that the evidence point that John knew the other gospel. He was familiar with the other gospel. But I think that John decided to say, you know what? I think Matthew, Mark, and Luke is covering a lot of the things. Let me not continue reinventing the wheel, so to speak. Let me just simply focus on stuff that they didn't cover and other important stuff that they didn't cover. And that's the reason why Mark is so important, right? The washing of the feet, what was the other thing? The washing of the feet, there was the other thing that is also recorded. Oh, the Passover, right? The prayer of Christ, John 17. That's a beautiful prayer. I want everybody to read it tonight, right? Of course, the book of Revelations, and also, John, 1 John 2 and 3, right? All these great books, right, are wonderful books, and thank the Most High that John was preserved to record these writings, because I believe there were more writings. What's the Gospel of Peter? How can there be a Gospel of Peter? The Roman Catholic Church said he's the Pope, right? The first Pope. I don't believe that. There's no evidence of that. I believe that if there was a such thing as popes, there will be 12, right? 12 popes, right? Apostolic succession, right? And so forth, so on. And I believe that Paul was the last chosen pope, if you want to call him that, or apostles, because although they chose Matthias, Christ himself chose him. He's a chosen vessel, right? Matthias was chosen by men. They just voted. They cast lots. That's all they did. And traditionally, when you cast lots, it's when God does not reveal what you should do. They just cast lot, and whatever lands, that's where they go, right? And so forth, so on. So it was not a divine choice. It was just a choice they picked. They voted it, or they cast lot, right? But Paul was chosen. That's why I believe he was the last apostle of the 12 apostles. So Peter was not the first pope. It was the term pope means papa. And Christ says, don't call any man on earth father. You can call him apostle, elder, these are all names, but rabbi, we can call no man rabbi. So let's stop calling these Jewish people rabbi. We can't do that. As a Christian, it's against my religion. We have to start taking a stand as Christians. With certain things we got, because, we're losing our culture. We're losing our culture. So I want to leave you guys with this. Study to show yourself approved. Make sure that you have an answer to give every man for your faith. And don't ever fall in love with a doctrine, because you may have to leave it. The Holy Spirit, I think, is revealing new things every day, every year. And you have to be a pure vessel, a honest and no agenda individual to allow the Holy Spirit to come in and bring in new information. So until next time, may the Most High keep you, watch you, and shalom.